Welcome back to the Bernard Lee Poker Show. As we mentioned in the news, the World Series main event is now complete. We have a champion, but that night was not only a night of celebration, but was really a night of worry, distress, and in all honesty, panic on the Las Vegas Strip. Just to kind of give it a little bit perspective, we are going to be talking with this gentleman who I think is officially the person who has been on my show the most. It's either you or Chris Moneymaker. That's definitely, you two are definitely the ones. But usually you're on because you have such tremendous success at the tables. This time you experienced what we're talking about. You experienced the panic that happened in the Las Vegas Strip, where there was rumors that there was an active shooter on the Strip and that there was panic throughout all the poker rooms up and down from MGM to Paris to Bellagio to Aria, etc. Welcome back to the show, Blair Hinkle. Blair, thanks for joining us and kind of giving your take and your memories and experiences firsthand about this.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. Of course, I'd rather have been on for another poker tournament win, but
right.
I haven't been doing enough of that lately. So, but yeah, I'm happy to give my account of what I experienced. I know everybody feels and experiences everything differently, but it was scary. Like,
yeah,
some people
let me just give a little bit of a summary so people understand what we're talking about, because some people may not know. So that Saturday night, the World Series completed relatively early in the night. There were some long nights in the main event, but relatively early, around 5:30-ish, 6 o'clock. Then later on that night, there was panic, supposedly at the MGM, what people thought were gunshots, but really the glass, one of the glasses was shattered, and people thought it was a gunshot scenario. So then now false reports were sent throughout the entire Strip. Obviously, social media helped with it as well. But Aria, Caesars Palace, Bellagio, both Bally's and Paris at the World Series, suddenly there was mass panic. And from what I understand, there was also banging or loud, what sounded like loud explosions at certain ones of these properties. And now suddenly people started getting panicked and people started racing out of all of these properties, literally hurting people on the way, trampling them, and then also really injuring some people. Go on social media, you can see certain people who were hurt. Daniel Negreanu hurt his hand very badly. Vanessa Cade had a knee injury. Mike Mattisau had a back injury. Liv Boeree, also another knee injury. So there were a lot of people who were injured in this really stampede of people worrying about going out. Obviously, gun violence has been an issue over the last few years. And back, unfortunately, in 2017, there was a mass shooting in Las Vegas as a gunman fired down on a music festival and killed 60 people, and hundreds were injured. So again, all of this was in a lot of people's minds. I think everyone is always a little bit on edge. A scenario like this happened in Europe as well years ago with regards to gunmen, etc. But this one, I think, really threw people. And so that is kind of the backstory for everyone who didn't know about this. Blair was there and was playing at the Paris casino when this happened. And then I'm going to just give it to you and just you tell me kind of what happened. What event were you playing in, and kind of how it all started?
Right. And just to kind of continue where you were going with that, like when I arrive at poker tournaments now, a lot of times, just because of the amount of people there and everything like that, I kind of try and be aware of my surroundings and where are the ways to get out, just because you never know when, because of the way the culture in the US is like it's almost accepted now that mass shootings can and will keep happening.
Right.
And so,
and it's horrible to say that. We went to the Celtics game. We went through the metal detectors, and there were 3 officers there with automatic rifles. And I have to tell you, like, I've been to Europe and a lot of the airports, for those of you who haven't, that's unfortunately, that's commonplace. But here in the US, to see that, I was thrown. My kids were thrown.
yeah,
And I did say, I was like, well, I guess it's pretty, I mean, it is a safer place because you've just gone through metal detectors and these guys are here. At the World Series, we don't go through a metal detector.
No.
People can walk right, people can just fly in and then walk right into the room and just, for better reason, let loose. Like, I mean, like, you have no idea. And so it is a scary scenario.
So that's what you always, I wanted to start with that just because, like, it's always, like you said, in the back of your mind that that's a possibility to happen. So just, keep that there. So anyways, yeah, I was playing the WSOP closer event, Flight B, and we were down to probably about 50 tables left on the flight. And the hand part of the thing is kind of funny. I'll get to that in a little bit, I guess, but we'll just jump right into it. So I hadn't heard any news about any rumors or anything. I'm just playing my hand. We're about 150 from the money, so that's all I'm thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
I've got about 11 or 12 big blinds short stacked, trying to, maybe limp into the money and run it up if I can.
Right.
And a 9 big blind stack shoves from middle position, folds around. I look down at an ace 7 offsuit, and I'm thinking, oh, do I call, whatever? And then I hear a commotion behind me. So turn back to my right. And like I said, we've got like 50 tables left, which, what was that, 400 and however many people. And I'm kind of in the middle of all this grouping of tables. They're all pretty close together.
Right.
I look back in the ballroom and see a couple security guards like moving quickly into the room.
Yeah.
And immediately it was like a human water, like the wave kind of, as tables. I just see people start popping up out of their seats and running towards me and my table, which was, closer towards the exit areas of the ballroom.
Right.
And so you don't have any time to react. You don't say, hey guys, all you hundreds of people that all of a sudden are running towards me, what's going on? And you don't really have time to think. So I look at that and I'm thinking, like, is this really happening? What do I do? And then, just instinct takes over, survival instinct, really, because within 2 seconds I was thinking there's a shooter. And so I pop up out of my seat, start moving with the crowd, because at this point, like I said, it was like the wave at a stadium.
Right.
How quickly tables start popping up towards you of people and everybody just running.
So no one said anything about a shooter. You just kind of, like, in your head, it was like, oh my God, something's happening.
Yeah, I want to be clear. I didn't hear anybody say shooter. I know some poker players did. I think on the, the ones that were close to the security guard, because even though I'm, it's 50 tables doesn't seem like a lot, but I was still probably 150 feet from the entrance doors. So when I see security come rushing in and then people just popping up and moving like that, you don't have time to look for a shooter or anything, and I didn't hear. I just knew all of a sudden everybody was panicked, and I knew what it meant. That's the thing about it here now that is so scary. Like, within a second, I knew why people were so scared. It's not like, oh, earthquake, which one of my table mates did think that and got under the table, which would have been safer than what I did. I wish I would have been able to relax and just sit at the table like some people did and let the stampede happen past you. Right. But so anyways, we'll get back to so I jump up out of my seat, turn to start running, and I'm moving, however many steps, and somebody else's chair is right in front of me all of a sudden, and you're being moved with the crowd. And so I tried to kind of just like jump, get over it, ended up just taking a face plant onto my arm and just kind of crawled quickly under a table. So I didn't get, it was so quick. I don't really know if I got stepped on much or whatever.
Right.
There's two other people already huddled under the table. And the people, I mean, obviously everybody's running, so people clear out quick. I still don't have time to process exactly what's going on, but I'm still thinking shooter. I was under there for who knows how many seconds. I'm just listening, you know, and trying to decide what am I supposed to do.
Right.
So I listen, don't hear any gunshots, and still super frazzled. I just looked at the other two people and I just shook my head like this and kind of nodded towards the exits. And then I got up and sprinted as fast as I could out the side and out the back exit where I knew there was an exit. I wish I had realized that there were exits in the back of the room. I just hadn't noticed them.
Right.
But obviously in a shooter situation, running out into a hallway and then out the exit would not be ideal. But in the time, you have no time to think or process. I was just thinking, where is the first exit I can remember seeing? You know, sprinted out. As I get to the doors, I wasn't far behind the Stampede still. There was an exit, and then you'd come out to this concrete area, and then a lot of stairs down. And so as I'm getting caught up to the herd, there's people just, you know, on the stairs, you know, getting up and like limping down the stairs. And I'm just kind of the last part of that group, which was probably a lot safer than if I had, you know, what I saw when I got to the stairwell was a bunch of people injured because they were being forced down all these stairs all at once.
Wow.
So I get outside. Nobody is close by that I recognize. There's actually not even that many people right out in the street area outside of Paris Ballroom. And I just like start walking, and I'm like looking around, like, who do I talk to? Where do I go? What am I supposed to do now? So I heard somebody behind a concrete wall say something to somebody, and I thought they said, come over here, or it's safe over here. And so then I like quickly walked over there, and they were like, it's an active shooter, you know, and I was like, yeah, that's what I figured, but I didn't hear any gunshots. We finally get a chance to like slow down. I'm texting my friends to try and like let them know what happened and that I'm out.
Right.
And this Brazilian guy walks up to me and he says, do you have a WhatsApp on your phone? Like, he goes, I don't have my phone. I left it at the table, which a lot of people just have their phones sitting on the table. So you didn't have time to like think, I better grab my phone. Like I said, it was like 2 seconds max. You had time to get up and go. And
it's like a tsunami of just like, it's just suddenly, you see it in the distance. It's just suddenly creeps up on you really quickly.
Right.
We're all we're like, so we've seen pictures online where the tables are knocked over, chips everywhere. Were tables being knocked over as people were running through?
I mean, that whole time frame I just described was so quick.
Yeah.
Like you were just like, in terms of the observations, like I said, I don't know how long I was under the table for. It was all just so fast.
Right.
And so I do remember thinking, like, as I was getting thrown over this chair, like everything, yeah, I could see stuff knocked down, but most of the tables that I went through were all still intact. Like people were managing to move around the tables pretty well.
Right. I assume not only the players, but the dealers and the floor people there, and I'm not blaming them by any stretch. It's the same thing, but I'm just trying to create the scene. They're all everyone's running, right? It's not like people are staying behind. It's just like mass, let's get out of here kind of thing.
Yes, it was for the most part, that's what it felt like. Like, so after I was under the table and then I took off, there was nobody at the tables that I noticed. Like
Right.
there were a few that got under the tables. That was kind of what happened. And so when I took off running, I felt like I was one of the last people in the room, which was super scary, obviously.
Sure.
Thinking about, I didn't know why everybody got up and ran. Like, obviously, you don't connect like, oh, well, if security was running into the room, it's not like the gunman was right there. But
Right.
in your mind, you think that person could be right at that end of the room, like I said, like 100, 150 feet away.
Mhm.
So it's very scary to think just like get up and run.
Right.
So, but I did, because I also was thinking I need to get out of here as fast as possible. I don't want to be a sitting duck, like just sitting under a table if there is a shooter that walks into the room.
Right. So you never
So,
heard any sound. So the
no,
assumption would be is this stampede happened
right.
because obviously social media, but also in the scenario, they must have heard something to kind of spark this, right? It's not like you read this and then you just get up and start running. Something must have happened.
Yeah, you would think that. And I heard afterwards that some poker players said that they were like, I talked to Sean Deeb afterwards, and he had said he had seen some reports on social media already, and his table was talking about it. So I was not in tune with that stuff at all. And it's just, it seems so far-fetched. Like I saw a lot of comments on Twitter like, oh, how do you just assume? Well, when you see the fear in people like that,
Right.
you already know what they're afraid of. It's not like, what else is it going to be at this
Right.
point?
Right.
So that's why it wasn't really like stop and ask questions. And that's what's so dangerous about this, is it spread so quickly from a casino that's like, 4 casinos away.
Yeah, like
Where,
literally, we're not talking like 100 yards away, folks. MGM is clearly over a mile away.
yeah,
And the word, and again, obviously, because of the world of social media, the word can get to you so quickly, because every social media outlet had something saying on Twitter, hey, here, there's an active shooter. I know there were text messages coming back and forth, group chats saying, hey, this isn't a joke, seek shelter, and all this kind of stuff.
right.
So the word got out very, very quickly. And obviously the fear spread. Talk a little bit about, you get outside, obviously the stampede, worrying about getting down the stairs, people getting injured going down the stairs. Now you're
Yeah.
outside and everyone's kind of, I'm sure, like staring at each other like, should we stand here because they could come out? You know what I mean? Like I'm thinking about myself. I'm now there, and now you're standing around looking at people you don't know. And
Right.
I'm sure there's some people that don't even speak English. And now
Yes.
you're like, should we be even standing here? Like, what do we do
Right.
at this point? So kind of what was going through your mind and what was going through everyone else's mind?
Yeah. So when I first got out, I looked down both ends of the alleyway behind the casino, and I could see police lights at one end, which scared me too. I was like,
Yeah, I'm
well, I don't want to
sure.
go that way.
Right, right,
Even though I probably should want to go where the police lights are.
right, right,
So I
right.
went back behind the concrete wall, and a Brazilian man walks up and asks, hey, he says, hey, my brother's inside, can I use your phone, do you have WhatsApp? And like
Right.
immediately, like I felt that I have 3 brothers,
Of course.
and I was like, oh my god, yes. And we opened it up, and we had it all set up so that he can text his brother, and his brother responds, yes, false alarm. Like he says, I'm okay, false alarm is what
Right.
they're telling us. So that was just like a huge relief, but
Right, right.
it was still insanity. But that was how I kind of found out that, okay, false alarm, there's not actually somebody in there, just going
Right.
off on people in the World Series.
But then you also have to be slightly concerned because, again, we're talking tragedies, right? I'm not making light of any of this. We talk about, go back to 9/11. They said it was a false alarm. there wasn't a problem, stay in the building, et cetera, et cetera. And that obviously was not the case. So was there
Right.
any concerns of people being like, is this really a false alarm? Are they just saying this? Again, I'm not criticizing the, the police department, et cetera. That's not the point. I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to live that moment with you
Yeah,
and be
yeah.
like, you hear false alarm. Like, is it really false alarm? Is it not false alarm? Do I want to go back to my hotel room? Do I want to stay behind a concrete wall? Like, again,
Right.
for me, it's just, and also knowing so many of my friends were there, I just had this utter sickening feeling and fear. So that's kind of why I'm trying to like understand from your side. And how long did you guys stay outside before you went back in?
So it had to have been 5 or 10 minutes until I saw the Brazilian guy. I was also just walking around with people walking past me. One guy grabbed his sandals out of like a bush. So I don't know if he was with the group that all forced their way out at once. And like, as he's just getting thrown, like he just chucked his sandals or something. Like,
Right.
I saw a lot of people in their socks or bare feet. I know people lost shoes just trying to run out in this
Right.
in the whole stampede. And I saw this woman come by with bare feet. She had a pretty bad looking like cut on the top of her feet, and I was like, "Oh my God, do you need help? What do we do?"
Yeah.
She was like, "I'm gonna walk towards the emergency lights
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
see if there's an ambulance over there." And I offered to help. She says, "No, I can walk. I'm gonna just go over there." So everybody's just trying to figure out what's going on. So we get the false alarm response from the Brazilian's brother who was inside in the poker area. I slowly find my way back up to the back areas of the Paris Ballroom, and everything's obviously a mess, and everybody's like totally shocked. Like everybody's still in shock and very confused as to how and what exactly just happened, because
Right. Right.
like a lot I've seen on Twitter, some people blaming social media for this stuff. I can tell you nobody at my table had any idea, because we would have already mentioned it in conversation. Right. And I think that's how most of the room probably was. I know, I guess, like I said, Sean Deeb's table had already talked about it for a few minutes.
Right.
But I had no clue, and nobody at my table had any clue. This was pure just reaction to what we saw happening at one end of the room. And I think most of it was that way, was just, you see that fear. It wasn't like, oh, there's an active shooter over at MGM. Right. It was like, you see people running, right, and you know why they're running. And so
there's something wrong. They're not, this isn't a race, and to see who's fastest. There is something seriously wrong. You're not wondering what it is, but let's go that way because everyone's going that way.
Right. And so that's why it was so crazy and intense for just that short little burst of time and everybody getting out. So yeah, we came back in, and they had done a really good job of telling everybody, hey, we've got EMT stations, like, if you've got bruises, cuts, whatever, go see these people. Otherwise, please, the police have informed us there's not an active shooter. Please exit the tournament area. You can grab any of your personal items. As long as you see a floor staff will walk you to your table. All the necessary precautions, so nobody was like grabbing poker chips off the table or anything, to cheat.
Right.
So I mean,
but there was no indication you were going to continue that night, because I know people were talking like we shouldn't play. People are scared. People aren't even coming back, et cetera, right?
Right. So I went out into the hallway just to wait around, chatted with some other faces that I know from the poker scene. Yeah. And we're all just kind of like, well, we're super amped up. Like that adrenaline rush. I don't think I've run that fast or like jumped, like as you're jumping over. I was just like hurdling chairs and stuff. When I got out of the crowd, when I moved to get to that door, I could not believe how fast I moved and was going. I was like, holy crap. So everybody's just jacked up after that. And we're all like recounting the experience. And so just talking to people in the hallway, And then randomly there was a group and Helmuth was there and I was explaining like, yeah, I've got a room over here. And Helmuth was like, if you've got a room, you should just go back to that one. And I was like, you know what, Phil, that's actually a good idea.
Yeah.
I was just like, peace. I'm just going to go back to my room and wait
Right.
for him to tell us when we have to come back. And then, 20 minutes after I was in my room, I saw the text that we're going to try and bag for the day.
Yeah.
Come back down and the floor staff said, well, we might play the closer event because we still had 3 hours of play left.
Yeah.
To catch up to flight A.
Right. So, a weird scenario, right? Of course.
So they were trying to figure that out, whether or not we should play flight B all the way through and then restart the day later.
Right.
And I still have A7 and
but I mean,
the middle position guy is shut.
They're everywhere now, right? I mean, like there's or did the dealer actually hold it?
So that's what's so crazy. So it's been like an hour and a half. They let us back in. They're gonna like recreate everybody's table that's been flipped or whatever, and come back to my table, and everybody's chip stacks are still pretty much intact. Like
really, wow,
where they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
My backpack had kind of been moved. I had it on the back of my chair. I didn't grab it. I just went.
Yeah.
It had been moved to like a few seats away, so I guess it had been kind of thrown off my chair.
Yeah. And somebody just put it next to the chair closest. Yeah.
And so, but at my seat, my chips, my 5 chips or whatever I had left, are sitting there, and my cards are still sitting there. And I look over at the guy who had been all in.
Yeah.
And his cards still there.
Are still there. Wow, crazy.
His chips still sitting there with the all-in button next to it.
Nuts.
So, yeah, and everybody else had folded. So I had like an hour to think about. I mean, what I was
hopefully that's not the only thing you were thinking about that whole hour, but yeah, I got it.
No, it wasn't. But after like the everything settled, I remembered too. I was like, holy crap, I got to make a decision on this hand.
Right.
So it was funny too, because it was like a pretty close spot, like mathematically wise, I'm supposed to call a 9 big blind shove. Just on pure chips, I'm supposed to. But then I was like, but what about like ICM? We're getting closer to the money.
Right.
And I was like, that probably tells me not to call. And I went back and forth in my head. I like had a little bit of a live read that he was weaker. I remembered that then afterwards, like I was replaying the hand.
Right.
And so I was like, but I think he's towards the bottom of his range. So I was like, maybe I should call. Anyways, I ended up, because I didn't know if they were even going to allow us to play the hand out.
Right.
I assumed they would. But then they announced we were just bagging up our chips and the night was going to be over. I was like, so are we supposed to play this hand or not? And I was like, you know what? I think it should be a fold anyway. So I just folded, threw the chips over to him, and we bagged up our chips. That way it was just like, I didn't want to deal with any confusion of like,
right.
Did the deck get manipulated? We both knew that we did have our same hands.
Yeah.
Anyways,
did he ever tell you what he had?
Well, I showed my A7 and said, here you go. Like, I think I'm supposed to call, but it's a close spot, so I'm just going to fold. And he was like, oh, we were flipping, and he wouldn't show. I was like, we were flipping, huh? And he goes, yeah, we were flipping. And I was like, so like 60-40 flipping. He's like,
right. King Jack or King Queen. Exactly. Right.
I was like, you know what? That's fine. I didn't want to run up against that hand, 100 people from the money anyways, and just run it for both of our stacks.
Right. Well, what a crazy. So did you guys come? Because I know some people just like, I'm not coming back. This is ridiculous. So did you come back the next day and play?
Yes, I did. I ended up fortunate enough to make the money, and 2 people from our table that night didn't even come back.
Right.
And so they did show up for day 2 though. And so it was just, crazy experience. The one thing that I thought was really weird the next day when I got to kind of rethink about everything was really, and I know I touched on it here, but it's so crazy how like I couldn't communicate very well. Nobody said a word while they were running towards us, at least that I registered in my brain. And so that's what's so scary about it. Like, well, not every, but 90% of us went into survival mode.
Right.
And the only reaction was not like, we need to communicate what's going on here. It was literally get your ass out of the room
That way.
as fast as possible.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And so
And you didn't say a word, so they could have all not even spoken English or not the same language, and you just understood, we got to go. Like, we can't be here. Yeah. Absolutely unbelievable experience. Obviously, when we come back, we're going to talk with another person about this experience. It is definitely unfortunate that this world that it is, I don't want to say accepted, but it's, people thought about it so quickly, right? In a world that gun violence isn't there, you would have been questioning what's going on. But the fact that Blair and others, it went right to that spot is unfortunate. Blair, we're so thankful that you're safe. We're so thankful that you didn't get injured, and this was a false alarm. And I really appreciate you coming on and kind of recounting what happened during that night.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate sharing. I mean, it was definitely, it's a moment in my life that I will never forget. That's for sure. One of the scariest moments of my life, for sure.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Well, again, thankfully you're safe. Appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to talk more about this unfortunate situation. Thankfully, a false alarm, when we return here on the Bernard Lee Poker Show.